if you're a perfectionist, recovering or otherwise, and you've ever had perfectionist tendencies, then you know a thing or two about procrastination because you've dealt with it a time or two. Sometimes you beat it, but I bet sometimes procrastination beats you. Listen, as a recovering perfectionist myself and as a professional life coach, I've worked through a lot of procrastination, both my own and my clients. And one thing I've learned about procrastination is that it's almost never about laziness. Sometimes it's about confusion or overwhelm or even the fear of failure. But for some perfectionists, procrastination is actually rooted in shame. Lots of perfectionists struggle with shame, and the ones that struggle majorly with procrastination, it's often because they've developed a habit of shaming themselves for the failures that they imagine they'll encounter. And of course, whenever shame shows up, it shuts you down. And procrastination can turn into unrealized potential, which then becomes another thing to be ashamed of. And it becomes a vicious cycle. If this sounds like you, I've got something for you today. I've got a concept I want to introduce you to. I want to talk about embracing imperfect beginnings as a practical strategy for overcoming procrastination. It's going to be so good. Ready? Let's go. Good day, good people. Welcome back to episode 94 of the Life Edit Project podcast. As always, I'm your favorite life coach and podcast host, Coach Elizabeth, and I'm super excited that you have joined me again today. I cannot believe it's been 94 episodes. We're coming up on the 100th episode. Hopefully I'll do something a little bit special for you. In the meantime, I'm really excited to get into today's topic, but I also really want to talk about the things that you want to hear about. So ask me anything. If you've been stuck trying to make a decision, or if you want a fresh perspective on a situation that's been driving you crazy, maybe you're dealing with a strange relationship dynamic that feels a little bit off to you and you need an unbiased opinion to help you see things more clearly. Whatever it is you got going on, bring it on. There's a link in the show notes where you can drop me a line and give me the tea, and I'll respond here on a future episode of the show. It's free 99 and you can remain anonymous so that your business ain't all over Front Street. So go ahead and ask me anything. And of course, be sure to subscribe and follow the Life Edit Project podcast wherever you like to listen so that you don't miss my response. You can tune in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. And if you subscribe, new episodes will show up in your feed auto-magically so you won't ever miss a thing. So let's go ahead and dive in and talk about imperfect beginnings as a strategy for overcoming procrastination. But first, you know how I do. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so let's start by setting the stage for this conversation by redefining perfection. And yeah, I know I've spent probably now dozens of episodes talking about my personal definition of perfection and perfectionism. But this is always a really good conversation, and it's a conversation worth having. And today I'm going to take you somewhere a little bit different. So lean in. Okay, usually when we use the word perfect to describe something or someone, we mean that it's flawless or without defect. And when we're thinking from that perspective, imperfect means the opposite. It means something's flawed, deformed, or deficient. And so if this is how we're thinking about perfection and imperfection, it's no wonder that we try so hard to avoid being imperfect, to avoid thinking of ourselves as imperfect, because no one wants to think of themselves as being deformed or deficient. But for the rest of this episode, I want to use an alternative definition. Let's think of perfect as meaning complete. So if perfect means complete, then imperfect means incomplete. So if you've been struggling with shame-based procrastination, I want you to try to embrace imperfect beginnings as the path to getting started and building momentum. And this is so that you can just get on with being your amazing, authentic self instead of wallowing in the despair of being, someone who's different than who you wish you were. Oh my gosh, I feel like that was really confusing, but go ahead and hit rewind if you want to hear that again. Okay, so what is an imperfect beginning? An imperfect beginning is when you start without holding yourself to a standard of completion. Because let's be real, that's the problem that a lot of perfectionists have. No matter where we are in the process of becoming, we're holding ourselves to the unreasonably high standards of someone who has already complete understanding and mastery of the thing that we're just beginning. But if you practice being okay with an incomplete beginning, you can believe that it's normal and expected to not have everything that you might expect yourself to have down the road, you can stop the shame that drives procrastination, and that means you'll actually start more and therefore create more of what you actually want in your life. And here's the practical tip. So if you're taking notes, this is where you start writing things down. Here's the practical tip for how to do this more often and more consistently. I want you to ask yourself this question. Where does it make sense to start if you're not holding yourself to the standard of completion? Right? So let's use the example of learning how to play the piano. If you are having a perfectionist fantasy, you might be envisioning yourself as being able to play your favorite song and having it sound the same way that it does when you stream it on YouTube. But playing a song is a standard of completion that doesn't make sense for you if you've never actually played a note on the piano. So embracing an imperfect beginning would be more like playing the simple melody of that song with one finger, one note at a time. That's where you start your playing journey. And as you learn more about how to play the piano and as you learn more about how to make music, you can add on and make your song more complete. So instead of playing one note at a time, then you start playing basic chords where you're playing 2 and 3 notes at a time. So you're adding harmony and complexity to the sound. And then maybe you learned even more complex chords and then chord inversions. And so every iteration of the song that you learn, it becomes more complete and therefore more perfect. And this is really key. When the measure of perfection is completeness, then you don't have to try so hard to avoid flaws and mistakes. The point of playing a song on the piano is not to play every single chord and every single note flawlessly. It's to be able to create a series of sounds that are so complete that you will recognize them as a song. And that's a completely different standard. It's a completely different way of judging your success. Let me give you another example. Let's say you want to focus more on your health by working out. So again, if you're having a perfectionist fantasy, you might imagine yourself doing the kind of workout that you see all the gym girlies doing on TikTok. But if you've never been a gym girly, if that's not your life, if you've never really been athletically inclined, your imperfect beginning might just be to walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes without passing out. Right? You have to be willing to allow yourself to start at the level that you can actually complete instead of making yourself wait until you think you can actually complete the entire journey in one step. That's super unrealistic. And here's what I also want you to remember. Embracing imperfect beginnings is not about lowering your standards. It's not about celebrating mediocrity, and it's not about trying to make yourself feel good when you don't hit your goals. Imperfect beginnings are a strategy for getting started, especially when shame has been the thing that's been keeping you stuck in inaction. And getting started, it's the hardest part of any journey and it's the hardest part of any project. So being able to start exponentially increases your chances of finishing or completing the thing that you start. And the more often you get started, the more complete experiences you will have. And that means imperfect beginnings are actually the key to achieving perfection when you define perfect as complete. As a life coach, I have helped so many clients use the strategy of imperfect beginnings to overcome procrastination, and I would love to help you do the same. And you will get the best results when you hire me as your life coach and work with me one-on-one. So to get started, just use the link that's in the show notes to book a call with me to sign up for my one-on-one coaching program. I cannot wait to get started. See what I did there? Okay, I'll be back in your ears next week with another juicy episode 95. In the meantime, just start where you are with what you have, because that is the fastest path to a perfect ending. All right? Peace.